welcome everyone to Language Talks. Today we are joined by Sutapa Basu, a best-selling award-winning author, as well as an educationist, poet, storyteller, and translator. She is most known for her work Dangle, Padmavati and Genghis Khan, The Curse of Nader Shah, The Birth of My Nation. Her professional life of 32 years also includes work as an educational faculty and creative writing trainer. As a publishing professional that spans a career from Oxford University Press India to Encyclopedia Britannica, South Asia, to Eupheus Learning, she has designed and supervised publishing of more than 400 titles. So let us talk to her about her illustrious career. Welcome to the show, Sutapa.
Thank you so much, Lalita. It's lovely to be on your show. And I think we'll have a very creative conversation about language.
I'm sure. I look forward to it. Thank you for joining. I would like to start by asking you, your journey revolves around various aspects of the language. I find it really beautiful. So how did this multi-dimensional creative journey begin for you?
So let me say that it began when I was quite small as a child, because I was a voracious reader. And so it started with reading, a lot of reading. Maybe the reason was that I grew up in a place and in a time period when there was no screen. There were no screens at all. Mm-hmm. So our entertainment was either you play outside or you read if you're at home. Right. And I used to read a lot. So that is how the entire relationship with language started. Mm-hmm. As I grew older, I started also writing. Not really writing to be published, but yes, small short poems or plays or little stories. So I would keep writing as well, in diaries, my own personal diaries. And then, and I also took up studying English literature. Possibly that the reason was the same, that I was so much fond of language and literature that that became my discipline, my academic discipline. And that went on to, I also completed my teaching degree and I started teaching. And I was a language teacher. Mm-hmm. So language has always interested me, and not only for the reasons that I have taken it up as a kind of my discipline or my academic pursuit, but language is something that is very intriguing, because you can use a particular sentence or a word and it means different, the meaning will change due to the context. So as you use a particular word or a sentence, and the context you use it in will give it a completely different meaning. Similarly, you can use language very pithily but mean a lot. Something like less is more. Or time is money. So means so much, and it's actually just 3 words. And this was also something that I always told my students, even today when I'm mentoring aspiring writers. I tell them that simply because you have language or you have a lot of words, you don't have to use all of them. So think how you will use the language very efficiently and yet mean a lot. How can you do that? That is a very important aspect of language and aspect of writing styles.
Okay. I think you highlighted a very important point, like less is more, like you said. It is so important. Written across genres, including historical fiction, thrillers, poetry, children's literature, educational publishing. I mean, isn't this a very, diverse plate to offer? So how does your creative process change across these different forms of writing? I'm curious to know.
Yes, obviously the process has to change. So let me give you a few examples. So when I'm doing a historical narrative, the period where my story is set becomes the most important thing, the most significant thing, because the setting, where am I going to place my story? In a city, in the country, in a fort. So that becomes important. So I do my research on that firstly to find out where I can locate my story first. Second thing that I do a lot of research on is what were the traditions of of those times? What was the custom? What was the language used? What was the food that was eaten? And the dresses that were worn. And there are times, like for example, I wrote this book called the Padmavati Bai, which is called the Forgotten Witness of the Battle of Panipat. Now that entire story is set in Maharashtra, in Pune. So I introduced not just Marathi food, Marathi traditional food, but I also introduced a lot of Marathi words. So I have to find that out. What is exactly correct to be used over there? So that is what I do with my historical narratives. Now, when we come to kidlit, writing for children, the target audience becomes my focus, because I have to manipulate language so that it meets their mental ability. Also have concepts that would be appealing to them. Like one of my books has, how do you hack the AI? So that was very interesting for children. Or we talk about environment. Now, what happens in children's literature? Most of the publishers want this, and also educators want it, because a lot of my books have also been prescribed in schools as a supplementary reading. So everybody wants that values should be there. At the same time, it's not a textbook; it's a storybook, and children should enjoy it. So I do put in those values, but woven very, very intricately, so that the child or the reader the young reader does not feel that it's something that is being, that they're being talked down to. It is something that comes very naturally, and possibly by the time the story moves, the reader herself or himself is also thinking in the same way.
Yes.
So I'm possibly putting it into maybe action, or maybe some kind of an activity. The other thing is that when you're writing for children, you need to have a lot of action, a lot of conversations, less of prose text, long pieces of text, because obviously then they might get bored and they might not want to read on. But when you come to educational books, there obviously the pedagogy is the focus. So it's very important that we know what the pedagogy is for that particular subject, for that particular theme. We also need to go back to syllabus, because all the textbooks that are used in all, whether it's the higher education or even in the schools and so on, they are all based on a kind of syllabus which is given out by the national educational bodies. So we need, whoever is writing a book needs to know that syllabus. The second thing that I have noticed nowadays is that it has to be activity based, obviously, and inquiry based. It has to be that way, because that is the trend or whatever has been recommended by the educational bodies today. At the same time, we have to keep in mind the educator, the teacher who is going to use that book in the classroom. So it can't be something that cannot be implemented in the classroom. You can't have an activity or some kind of a theory that you cannot implement in the classroom, because the teacher is at a loss. So we have to facilitate as well the educator when you're writing educational content. So that's how I would need to change my processes every time I change the genre. And maybe you will ask me, why is it that I change the genre? But there are a lot of writers who believe that they should become an expert at a particular genre or be known for a particular genre, be identified by that genre. But what I have always kept in mind is that every genre has its own parameters, technique, parameters of plots, of setting, character. So when I need to redefine my writing style to fit those parameters within these limitations, it becomes a challenge to my creativity. I need to think, I need to reflect. How can I still be creative and still adhere to these parameters? That, I think, helps me to improve my writing.
Yes, I think you're exploring all of your creative sides, unleashing your creativity through exploring all these genres.
Absolutely.
In particular, I would like to ask you about your genre, why it attracts you, like historical fiction. So it is a significant part of your work. especially novels like Padmavati, Legend of Genghis Khan. So, what draws you towards history?
So I believe, I'm totally convinced that history is a very important part of all human lives all over the world.
Right.
So as far as I'm personally, as far as my interest, my personal interest is that I had to study history per se, even though I was studying English literature, because history has a impact on all literary works of any particular period. So that is how I had to combine the study of both these disciplines. And of course, I love the stories. I love the storytelling that history offers us.
Correct.
Keeping all that aside, what I believe very, very strongly is every human being must be interested in history. The reason is you may be a scientist, you may be an economist, but when you are going to base your learning on certain theories, you have to know where they came from. And that is the reason history is actually a part of every academic study. And like I tell my children also, that what you did yesterday is history today.
Yes.
So try to look at history in that way. History is not a list of dates and events and names of kings and battles, and we have to memorize all that, and that is what makes history. Oh no, not at all. History has much more influence and impact on our lives, and especially today, I think it has a lot of, like, when people sometimes converse with me and they argue with me about maybe Gaza. I mean, why should Gaza have happened, and how the Israelis are actually, they are in the right, they're rightist because they are, there is a terrorist organization like Hamas, which they are trying to absolutely eradicate, which is true, which is absolutely true. But on the other hand, I always also ask them that, have you found out why there is a Gaza? So that is the thing. And then you will have to go right back, before even Israel was formed, what actually happened in that region. So you see, before we start talking and sometimes discussing and arguing, we need to know what is the background. And that is why I believe history is very, very important. And so when I work, I do a lot of research. Obviously, I have to spend a lot of time, especially when I'm doing historical narratives. I have to spend a lot of time. But for all my books, there is always a historical thread which sort of runs all my books, even if they are yeah. So when I do my research, I have to spend months doing the research because history comes from many sources. So I have to corroborate the sources, I have to find out actually what happened, and as a result, I actually compile a huge amount of data, which cannot be used. I can't really use that data in my books. So what I do is I use what I need, and then I keep the rest of the data because, as we were discussing, I have to promote my books. So I use that data sometimes to give ideas and a promotion about my books. So that is how I use history actually.
Wow. So you are a historian as well, doing a lot of research.
Yeah,
having a lot of data and knowledge and information about so many things. This is amazing. Sutapa, having worked extensively in publishing, editorial leadership, and educational content development, with what major transformations have you witnessed in this long span of more than 3 decades in the Indian literary and publishing landscape?
So Lalita, the first thing that I would say the biggest change are the number of writers. There are so many writers and so many books being churned out. But I would like to sort of ask the question whether all those books are readable. Because people are writing for various reasons. So books are badly written. Books are sometimes completely written by AI, which there's already been a lot of discussion about the Booker, where books have been written by AI. But at the same time, they're marketed very loudly. Okay? So in the noise that is happening in this environment, the genuine writers are getting lost. So that is one very, very big change. And the reasons why people write are, I mean, I have also been amazed why people write. So people will write because, yes, of course, most important is money. They write simply because it's a trend, or they may be writing because they want a tick on their CV.
Okay.
So nobody is seriously writing. I mean, very few people are seriously writing, and those serious writers, unfortunately, are people get to know them very rarely. And there have been times when I have really discovered gems, actually.
Okay.
And then if I find out how much a particular book, which I loved, the writing, the style, everything, how much is it selling, you will hear that it's hardly selling. Very, very sad thing, actually.
That's sad, yes.
Yeah. Now you're talking about publishing. So let me talk about editing.
Okay.
Because I've been actually, in charge of both at OUP, at Oxford University Press, and at Britannica. I was actually the publishing director. So I was the entire editorial team, and used to be under me, development and editorial copywriters, everyone used to be under. Editorial quality has tanked dismally. So when I had joined the publishing industry, editors were knowledgeable, they were ethical, they knew about the processes. But today, you have all these editors who have all joined the publishing, who know nothing about the processes, because editorial is actually a process. But
yes.
And there are multiple processes, in fact, as a part of the editorial, any editorial work that one does. But they have no idea about the processes. Their editing is terrible, and that again becomes a hiccup when you are reading. If you have badly edited books where you have typos and you have spelling mistakes, you don't want to read any further. So this is one of the, I think these are the changes which are not really very good for the writing and the publishing industry. But at the same time, and then when you come to educational publishing, that again has gone into another kind of a churn, because there's a lot of government interference, especially in India, with the social studies and history, how it is to be written. So writers don't have academic freedom, which is a very important thing that they need. The faculties, like for example, the school teachers, because I do a lot of faculty training as well, I find that they are all looking for easy ways of doing things. So they don't have content for which they have to work. They want everything everything handed down to them, and they don't want to spend time on the content, which makes it difficult, because after all, we are any writer has to cover a certain amount of topics as far as the syllabus is concerned. But when that writer is superfluously covering that topic, who is suffering actually? So that is what is very pathetic, that in all this thing, it is the true reader, the student who needs a lot of bolstering. They are the ones who are actually suffering.
Having worked in both print and digital learning platforms, how do you see technology reshaping publishing, reading habits, education? Like we talked about AI writing a little bit, but also can you tell us about the reading habits and education?
So technology has got, as everything, has got both sides, has got its, there's the good side and the bad side. So I could speak to you about writers who are using AI to simply write their entire book from scratch. Is obviously unethical. One can use technology for doing the grunt work. for example, the first editorial work that you want, you can give your book to AI and see what they would do with it, so that you don't really have to get into the language correction and things like that. So and research. The other thing is research. But of course, as we all know, AI can sometimes give you some very, very false sources. So we have to corroborate all that, which is what I constantly do. So technology can help you, but then you have to be very discreet about the kind of help you're taking from technology. When it comes to reading habits, I would say technology has actually helped to make more readers.
Okay.
Because people are now reading on Kindle, people are listening to audiobooks. So even when they're traveling or when they are commuting to their offices, they can still read, listen. So readers have, I think, increased simply because of technology. The other thing is that publishing, technology has helped publishing, because today it has helped, very importantly, publishing inventories. Why? Because today a lot of publishers don't really have a store of books. They don't keep their books in warehouses and so on. Why? Because there's something called publishing on demand, publish on demand, which has come. So as soon as they get an order, say for 10 books or something, they can always get it published on demand and then ship it to wherever it needs to go. So that way technology has helped. Technology has also helped very much in education, because today we can move a lot of educational content to the digital sphere. So if you look at schools, classrooms all have smart boards, and a lot of educators are using their smart boards. So what happens as a result? The textbooks are leaner, school bags are lighter. So that way technology has definitely helped us. But like I said, please, one should use technology, but at the end of the day, we have to use it very discreetly. Yes.
You have mentored writers, editors, teachers, and professionals from different fields. So what qualities do you believe are essential for aspiring writers or educators?
I think the first thing is that is ethics. So when if it's a writer, you should try and make sure that there's no plagiarism. You are not using AI to do your full work as a writer. And I think one more thing that a lot of both writers as well as educators are not doing is reading. The more you read, educators will get to know about new techniques. They will understand how to use them in their classrooms. Writers will get to know styles. They will know how to create characters, how to sketch out plots, and so on. So it's important to read. Also, like I advise a lot of aspiring writers, you have to find your own voice. You have to have your own style. But it can't happen, from thin air. You need to read a lot. You need to find out if there's a particular genre that you are interested in. Maybe you like writing thrillers. You have to read a lot of thrillers to understand how other writers are using that space. And you will find your own way, chart your own way. So that is why I said ethics is important, and that comes with a lot of reading, and being serious about your work. That is, writing or even teaching is not something you do because you've got nothing else to do. You have to take your work seriously, because if you don't take it seriously, nobody else will. So you often have, mostly female writers complaining that, everybody in my family thinks that writing is just a hobby, and they are unhappy about the time I spent away from them writing. So, but if you are serious about your writing, you have to constantly be serious about your writing. Then your family also take it that this is a serious pursuit.
Correct. Moving on to translation. So it has been an important part of your work. What makes translation such a creative and significant process for you?
So the translation that I have done has been an extremely rich learning space for me. So what I attempted to do was I picked up a Bengali heritage children's literature, very well known all over Bengal for generations actually. actually. In fact, the original book has Tagore has written the foreword for that book. It's a story of folk tales, fairy tales for children. And I thought, I know Bangla and I know English, so I thought it would be a cakewalk. But it was not. It was such a challenge and very. So the reason is that both Bengali or Bangla and English are very evolved languages, but they have their own nuances, their own cadenzances, their own connotations, and to accurately bring the emotion, accurately bring the ambience of the words that are there in Bangla to English and retain all those facets was very, very challenging, extremely challenging. So there were times when I had to actually retain the original Bengali word, and possibly put it in the glossary. But the other thing that I think that is very very special to all Indian languages is all Indian languages are very lyrical, very melodious. But English is not that, it does not form itself to music. Right? Now, in that particular book, actually, there were poems and there were lyrics. And I had to translate those as well, and retain the meaning and the ambience and the atmosphere, everything. So it was very challenging, but it was, I'm so happy that I did it, because I myself learned a lot about how translation and how to, keep the ambience and yet, keep the meaning, keep the ambience and accurately translate. That was one part. And I got a lot of happiness from a lot of people who called me up. And many of them were Bengalis who were NRIs, settled abroad. And they said, we want to thank you that you wrote this, you've translated this book into English, because now our grandchildren who can't read or understand or speak Bangla, they are able to read the same stories. That used to enthrall us when we were children.
I think that's the best compliment you got.
Absolutely. I'm so satisfied that I did it.
This is amazing. And as you said, translation does enrich us in so many respects.
Absolutely.
I agree. You're deeply involved in content creation, editorial management, and many things. So isn't it a tightrope walk to maintain originality and quality in such a fast-paced environment? How do you manage it?
So I keep my own pace. I'm very happy that right now my day job is over because I have retired from it, and I can now fully dedicate myself to writing. I keep my own pace, but then I have my times, which is and I'm very strict about that. So I will usually sit down at my desk at 9 o'clock and in the morning. Just like any going to an office and sitting there and start doing some work. So I'll sit at 9 o'clock, take a break for lunch maybe, and again work till about 5 or 6 o'clock. And I give myself deadlines that I will complete maybe one chapter, or I will complete 2 chapters in a day, or I will edit this. So I try to maintain that pace. That's one. I think my strongest competition is me myself, because I think that I believe that every one of my books must be better than the last one.
Okay, that's a very good point.
Yeah, so that is the way I go. And usually when I'm writing a book, even when I'm not at my desk, not actively writing, the characters, the plots, the dialogues, they keep spinning in my head. So I'm with the book all the time while I'm writing it.
Right. You're giving your, I think, 100, not 100,000% to the project. Leadership and collaboration have been central to your publishing and educational projects. So what have these experiences taught you creatively and professionally?
Every book or every educational project is not a one-man job. It is team effort. So if a book is a success, I give full marks to the writer, to the editor who has done their work in the publishing house, and the sales team. All together, when they all put their work together, only then can a book be successful. So as we were discussing, book promotions or marketing of book is also the task of the author or the writer, as much as it is the work of the publisher as well as their sales team. So a writer has to constantly be available to possibly do physical promotions or do social media promotions. So visibility is the name of the game, basically. So you have to constantly be visible.
Correct.
So that readers know you, remember you, and they know that you're coming out with something different, something new. So that is important. That is important. So that is where I think collaboration is a very, very important aspect of any. I think it's an important aspect of any kind of success. Nobody can do anything on their own.
Yes. In addition to your working language, English and Bengali as well, which other languages fascinate you?
So I'm fascinated by Hindi, the national language, and I have studied it actually in school. So yes, Hindi, Sanskrit, and French, Indian languages, also Russian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, these languages definitely fascinate me.
Achha, there are so many.
Yes.
Amazing. So what are you working on at present?
So I'm working on 2-3 projects at the same time. I mean, not at the same time, but one after another, but at different stages actually. But I'm a little superstitious and I don't like to talk about work in progress. But all I can say is that all these projects are on different genres. So I have this variety, and of things to work at, basically, which helps because I don't get bored then.
Sure. We look forward to your projects. I think they will be announced soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be announcing them.
Yes, right. So thank you so much for joining. And I love this conversation. I hope you enjoyed too.
I totally enjoyed it, Lalita. Thank you so much for having me.
You're well. I wish you best for your upcoming projects.
Thank you so much, Lalita. And the same goes out to you. I'm sure you will converse with more people and they will be, as interesting as you have been for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining me in conversation with Sutapa. See you in the next episode. Till then, have a good day. Bye-bye.